Hey, I'm Sturdy McKee, and this is Matt Fitzsimmons. We're both business coaches and authors, co-authors of The Best Small Business in the World. And we help business owners, not just people, business owners, make their businesses simpler, easier, and more profitable. And today's topic is a reality check on how you spend your time in your business.
Sure is. Going to show you a tool today that you can kind of look at and do a bit of self-evaluation. And Steady, as you know, this is a really humbling experience for a lot of people.
Oh, it was for me, for sure. Let's go in real quick. Let's just talk any wins for the week from your clients.
Well, yeah, I've had a couple actually. There's been two clients in particular, and what we do is every 6 months we do a half-day strategy session where we go off-site and we look at the strategy of the business. And it's been really interesting since COVID has kind of come to an end, and we're now looking forward. Yeah, kind of. It's still there in the background, but it's not like what it was, thankfully. And so what we're doing is we're planning these strategy days, which are going to come in October. So we get through the first 6 months of the year, and we do it. Now we do a strategy session every quarter, but this is a big one we do twice a year. We do one at the end of the year, and we do one at midway through the year. And so we're putting together the structure and the format of the half day that we're going to spend together and the questions we're going to ask. And it's really funny because you ask these questions and you can't help but start answering them, because you sit there and go, okay, well, is this division of the business going to be growing and staying the same or declining or whatever, what's happening in the overall economy and that sort of stuff. And you start answering the question straight away, and it's really tempting. So you sit there going, oh, I'd like to talk about that right now, but you've got to be really disciplined. And the win for my client is the juices are already flowing. So they just cannot wait to spend a half day off site and just work on the stuff and see what comes out of it, which is really cool, really exciting. So two clients in the same position.
Well, and then that sets the direction for the next 6 months. So there are no questions, people aren't lost. Everybody's working toward the next quarter or the next 6 months based off of what they do in that strategy day, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And it really is, and it's not necessarily a reinvention of strategy. It's just like a reconfirming that our strategy is still going to be relevant, because hey, the world changed on a dime a couple of years ago, and a lot of people didn't adjust their strategy as a result. And, you just have to look at it really deeply, and in the context of the wider economic situation and pandemics and wars and all that sort of fun stuff. So. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really great to see them fizzing. What about you, mate?
Yeah, the big win of the last week was a former client actually who came back and realized he had a bit of an epiphany with the team and the people he has selected. He has a new player that he's hired. He structured the compensation incentive structure a little bit differently to see, because he was a little uncertain about how it was going to work out performance-wise, not cultural fit-wise. He was pretty confident there, but he just didn't know enough about this person's performance. So he set it up. If she wins, he wins. If not, then they share the risk, that kind of thing. Well, she's killing it, and he is super happy. But it also brought into stark relief some other players on his team that he's been working for the past 2 years to coach and convince and prod and try to get the performance he wants, and they just are dragging their feet, not coming along. And with this kind of compare contrast deal, he sees, hey, it is possible. It's not me, which a lot of times we end up blaming ourselves or thinking something's wrong with us, right? So so he has had this epiphany and this breakthrough, and he's going to make some big changes in his business because of it, and it's going to be for the positive. So that's huge.
That's awesome.
Hey, let's get into the topic though, because this is a huge one for me. One of the challenge questions I ask my clients when we start working is, are you the hardest working player on the field, or are you the coach? What do you got on that?
So I'll just show you this tool, and you've seen it, but people watching the podcast might not have seen it before. But it's a really cool. It's a reality check, if nothing else, for where you actually are operating in the business, right? So, and you can do this anytime. You can just check in with this and go, how am I spending my time? Because within each business, there are different levels of people and different levels of positions, and they're going to be spending their time doing different things. And this
Work
is
and
just
skills, and yeah.
exactly, yeah. And so this is just a simple way of looking at how you're spending your time. So I'll just change my camera. Oh, I'll try and straighten it too, so it sort of looks sort of half.
It's fine.
So the way I tend to explain it is that, and this goes for any level of person in a business. So you've got, if you will, normally there's like 4 levels of people in a business, right? So at the very top, you've got the coach or the leader. So they have a role where they are setting the direction of the business. They are coaching people to perform. They're not necessarily doing the things themselves, but they're getting stuff done through people, and they know that the strength of their team is really dependent on how they are as a coach or a leader. Underneath them, they've got a manager. And if you want to contrast the difference, and I'm not sure which management guru came up with it, but the difference between a leader and a manager is that a leader does the right things and a manager does things right, if you know what I mean, if that kind of makes sense. So underneath those two, you've got the captain. You can use a sports team analogy, or if you will, a supervisor.
Yeah, kind of the lead in that role, right?
Yeah, exactly. And underneath that, you've got the player or the worker.
Right, and you can think of them as the individual contributor. So they're the way I look at this is they're doing the things, right?
Exactly.
And the captain's kind of leading by example and helping support them. The manager's ensuring that things get done, and the coach or the leader is deciding what things are meant to get done.
Exactly. And if we look at the stuff that gets done in a business, there's 2 types of stuff, right? Broad categories of stuff. And that's working with people to get stuff done, or doing it themselves. So doing stuff. Now, every role has an element of doing. And what I mean by doing is, like, even the CEO of a business is probably going to put in his expense claims and go through financial reports and that sort of stuff, right? And double check to make sure that these things make sense and all that. But then there's the people stuff, which is getting stuff done, you know, through people and working with people and empowering them and encouraging them and motivating and inspiring them and all that sort of stuff. So if they are the 2 different things, then it really comes down to how much time do you spend doing each of them. So you've got coach or a leader who will spend most likely probably in the vicinity of 90% of their time working with people. So 90% of their time, they're going to be getting, having meetings with people, setting direction, vision, strategy, getting people to execute that, all that type of stuff. And they'll be spending probably, and let's be generous here, 10% amount of time actually doing stuff. And then you've got this change from the role of the coach and the leader all the way down to the player or the worker, which probably is the inverse of that. So I like to put it down as sort of 10% and 90%. And then within that, there's this range, and different businesses have different ranges, and small businesses have quite small ranges, as it turns out. And so what I do is when I understand this, and when I show people that they're going to work with people or they're going to be doing stuff, I ask them, okay, so where do you fit? Where do you fit? Are you a coach or a leader, a really genuine leader, and spend 90% of your time just getting stuff done for people? Or are you the person who's got to load up the Facebook and, you know, you've got to defrost the muffins or something? Or like, what is it that you're spending your time doing? And what I find is, regardless of job description or job title, a lot of people who call themselves managers, but somewhere between a manager and a coach, they actually find themselves somewhere between a manager and a captain, because they're doing more stuff than they should be doing and getting stuff done through other people. That's what they should be doing, but they're not doing that. And a lot of supervisors who are spending 90% of their time doing stuff and not actually growing their team, then they tend to find that probably closer to a player and a worker, as opposed to the captain of the team or a supervisor. Does that make sense?
I love it. I think it's a really simple way, straightforward way to look at it, look at the hierarchy and think about, where do I fit? Because if you're not at the 90 on the people side, 10% on the doing of stuff, are you really being the coach and the leader that your business needs? And if you're down, at the lower tier, the way we've drawn it up here, the individual contributor, the player, the worker, if you're spending most of your time there, and I just had somebody today, share some information with me, and I just don't have time to work on the business. I'm too busy seeing patients and, working with the staff. Who's steering the boat? Who's deciding the strategy for the team?
It's
Who's deciding what gets done, man?
Yeah. And if you don't deliberately put time aside from that, for doing those sort of things, then they will just get lost and you'll just be on a treadmill.
Well, that's a key point you just brought up too, Matt, if you don't deliberately make time for that, because the other little dirty little secret here is, you see, there's only 100%, right? We've all got the same amount of time. So how is it some people are being far more successful in running their teams and apparently having more free time, right, than some other owners? And one of the ironies I've found in reaching out to people for their, to be on the podcast or to talk or to, have a quick meeting, is very often the ones that you would think are the busiest, they're running the biggest businesses. They have the most responsibility in terms of the size of their operation and their team and their revenue and all the rest of it. They're the most generous with their time because they can actually, that they have control over it. They can choose what to do with it.
It's right. It's control, isn't it?
It's not they have more time.
No,
more
exactly.
Available. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, Studi, I find, is that when you are in a startup business, generally speaking, you'll start here. If you start up a business where I go and I'm a cobbler, or I own a cafe, or I'm a Sparky or whatever, you start here, but you want that, but you got to start there.
But let's call out that is perfectly normal in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you're the chief cook and bottle washer, then you are, that's what you do. You do everything, and we all get that, and we've all been there. It's the transition away from that and not being addicted to it and not thinking that that's the only thing you can do.
If you look at the stages of growth of a business, generally speaking, you'll start here, right? So you start, and a lot of time will be spent doing stuff, and then eventually you'll hire some people. And you should be going into the captain's role, where you're leading those people from a day-to-day, minute by minute, hour by hour sort of point. And then eventually you'll be spending less time on the floor doing the stuff, and then more time in that management role, where you are looking at slightly bigger stuff and making sure that things are done right and putting systems and processes and that type of stuff. And then eventually, hopefully, you go there.
No, for sure. And as you start doing that, and we were just talking about this today, right? We're trying to delegate and get some of the podcast production off our plates, right? There may be options. There may be options. The point there is that it might not be a player that you hire. There are potentials for automation. So really any form of delegation to take the doing of the stuff and moving that to other people or to automated systems, or even repeatable processes that other people can do, is going to take the doing of the stuff off of your plate so that you can lead, so that you can think, so you can deal with the people. And thinking, right? Thinking is the hardest work there is. That's why so few people do it, right? So, but there's nobody else. If you're a business owner and you're listening to this, no matter if you're a solopreneur or you've got 1,000 employees, there is nobody who's going to think about your business and devote the effort and emotional energy and level depth of thought to it like you will.
100%, mate. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I think I find, and this is what I see most often, is that when people get that they start a business and they're there and they start something, they want to do something, they immediately think of themselves as a business owner. Therefore, I should be doing the coach leader job. And then you explain to them what the coach leader job actually is. And, you know, like you say, it's thinking, it's strategizing, it's playing a really big picture. And they sit there and go, that's what I want to do. And you sit there and go, okay, but we got to start here.
Right. You've got to get a customer. You've got to get cash flow. You've got to build systems. It's a progression. You can't,
exactly,
without a whole lot of funding and a whole lot of, you know, ability to hire a bunch of people right off the bat, you're probably not going to start at the coach level.
And you know what, the other thing I find with this particular way of looking at things is the biggest shift that an owner will take will be to hire their first person. Because what they do is they probably more than double the capacity of the business. Because if you're hiring someone to do the thing in the business and you're the owner, they're probably going to be, because they're focusing on one thing alone, they're probably going to be doing it better. But what it also means is that they've actually got to let some stuff go. And that's not easy sometimes. That's really hard to trust someone and say, hey, here's the keys to the business. Please don't burn it down.
Well, I remember this happened. I mean, I was at a talk at the SBA, the Small Business Administration in San Francisco, about starting businesses. And I was a solo on my own. This is going back almost 25 years, right? And I remember sitting in a room and this woman who was probably close to 60 was running a business, and she was, the speaker had been talking about delegation, and she was just having the hardest time with it. And he asked her, or she asked her, the speaker was also a female, and she was like, look, how many employees do you have? And she goes, well, like 8. So where are you of most value to the business? And she goes, well, what do you mean? She's like, what's the thing that you can do that nobody else in your organization can do as effectively? She's like, oh, I can do sales. She's like, okay, are you outselling 90% of the time? And she went, well, no, of course not. And she's like, why not? And she kind of bristled, right, and got a little defensive. It was like, well, because they don't do the other things as well as I do. And the speaker, the woman asked her, do they do them 90% as well? And she's like, well, maybe. And she's like, 90%'s an A. Go sell.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
And it was, right? And that happened, fortunately for me, that happened very early on. And it just made me kind of go, oh, I need to be paying attention to this. Not that I always did. Okay. Not that I always did, not that I broke through that right away, you know, but it was kind of in the back of my mind. I knew when I got bogged down, this probably isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. How can I do something else? You know, and the other thing, it's a great deal.
I think we all need help with that occasionally, you know.
Oh yeah.
I got one client I want to talk about just for a second, because I think that he actually illustrates this really, really well. So if we I'll just take you back to the thing for a second. And so often at this level, the player, the worker, you've got like, they're really technically focused and they're really technically competent, which is cool. And then obviously, you know, they go to a captain because they know what success looks like, and they know what good looks like. Then they go to manager, all that sort of thing. However, there is a bunch of people who don't actually want to do that role, or even that role. They actually just want to be that guy. And I've got a client who is exactly that. So they own a concrete business. And so what it is, it's a concrete surfacing business. So what they do is they smooth out concrete so you can drive forklifts on it, and they're perfectly flat and that sort of stuff, right? So they're perfectly flat. And I'm talking about fractions of a millimeter over 100 meters flat. So like perfectly flat. They put printing presses on them and that sort of stuff, so they've got to be aligned perfectly. Anyway, that's the stuff he loves. He doesn't actually want to be going over budgets and reports and doing HR management stuff and holding people accountable. So he hired somebody, a really competent guy, to become the leader of the organization. He's the sole shareholder, and he knows what he wants to do. So I think it's really honest of him and really smart move that he sits there and goes, well, actually, I don't want to do that. I still want to be involved in strategy. Absolutely, it's my business. But the day-to-day leadership and management of the business doesn't ring the bell. So I'm just going to do this technical role. And his business card says, Aaron Bennett, technical and owner. So he's the guy who does the technical stuff and looks at the chemistry of the compounds that go on the concrete. He's also the owner, and that's
Well,
just him being
that-
really honest with his situation and going, "This is what I want to do. This is what I don't."
Well, I love that too, because that's one of the things that if you're listening to this and you're an owner, you're like, well, that's what I want to do. You've still got to go through the phase of building the systems, of building the processes, of hiring the right team. Ultimately, that's all up to you. Now, once you've gotten there and you have enough of a structure in place, and you can hire that leader, hire that manager. A lot of folks kind of hire a COO. They still want to be involved in the strategy and stuff, but then they want the free time. Sometimes the free time's to travel. Sometimes the free time's to spend with your family. Sometimes the free time can be, for those people who love it, doing the craft, doing the thing that you're passionate about. So that doesn't preclude you from going out and still being involved at the level you want to in the business. I love what you said. I think what I ask people to do is just make it a deliberate choice. Don't fall into one by default because you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Build it, structure it, choose what you want to do, be deliberate about it. So.
100%. That's what Aaron does. And he's very clear about what he wants to do. He actually trains for Ironmans. So the technical role, he can
there you
rock
spend
out
your
to
time.
Yeah, exactly. That's how he spends his time. He can rock out to a job and go and do some tests, and then in an hour and a half be done with a recommendation, and that can be his whole day that he jumps on a bike or goes for a swim or a paddle or something, you know, whatever.
Perfect.
So it really does suit him. So, but you make a really good point. You make a really great point about you've actually got to get those other things right, the systems and all that other stuff, and hire the right people and get them in the right seats and that sort of thing. And you're probably going to have to do a chunk of that yourself.
Oh, right, because otherwise the wheels are going to come off when you try to make that transition, right? If you leave the thinking to somebody else, to the building of it to somebody else, that's pretty risky. But thanks for sharing that tool, Matt. That was, I hope that was really insightful for people, and they start to really think about where they fit in the business and where, you know, what they want to be doing versus where they maybe are right now. But if you guys got value out of this, if you're checking us out, please like it, comment, leave your questions, share it with somebody, tag somebody who needs to hear this, and we will be back in another week.
Do you know what I'd really love is to get an email or two from people who see this tool for analyzing where they're at and going, okay, here are the biggest struggles that I'm finding from going from one level to another, or I'm working too much in this level, I should be working in that level. How can I go about that?
Hit us up, send us your questions. We will answer. All right. Until next time.
Steady at steadycoaching.com or Matt at mattfitzsimmons.com.
Steady at steadymckee.com.
Sorry, Steady McKee. My bad.
No problem. No worries.